In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you the process that I go through to be able to carve small designs and small text. If this is something that you're struggling with or want to know a little bit more about, then you're going to want to stick around. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Ed here with the 8 Timber Behind, and this video, I'm warning you now, is a bit longer than my typical videos. In most of my videos, I like to get straight to the point, and it is going to get to the point in this video, but it is every single process or the process I go through to get the correct output. So I'm going to give you the main points right now that you can expect in this video. So let's start in the design part in Carbide Create. Point number one is that when you reduce your design, you're going to also want to eliminate useless vectors, unnecessary vectors. Your design may have a little bit more detail. When you reduce the size, you're going to want to get rid of those vectors that do not add any value to the overall picture of the design. This is going to allow for your V-bit or whatever tool that you're using to carve correctly. What tends to happen is that they end up carving on top of each other and it becomes one single carve or one single pocket or something like that. You lose the detail. Point number two is regarding your fonts or your text. Not every single font and text is going to look good when you V-carve it, but every single text is going to look good when you advance V-carve it. I'm going to share with you a couple of different things to look out for, and it's going to help you determine whether you want to go with the V-carve or the advanced V-carve toolpath. Now, when it comes to application or the execution of the carve, point number three is regarding setting your Z0. I set my Z0 using the paper method, and convention tells you that you go down, you lower your Z0 or your bit down until you can no longer move that paper. That paper can no longer move, you set your Z0 there. But when it comes to carving small text, small fonts, you're going to want to set your Z0 and all your X and Y and Z0s with a V bit. And when it comes to setting your Z0 specifically, you're going to want to have movement under that V bit. You want that paper to move freely and have a little bit of contact. You still want it to move freely underneath that V-bit. So I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like. And the fourth point that I think is very important, which actually falls under the design portion of it, is that when you set up an advanced V-carve with a design or logo that is too small, you can achieve a flat bottom carve with just your V-bit. And in the setup process, it is very important to still enable your pocket tool, your end mill. But what happens is that the end mill gets bypassed and everything is carved with the 60-degree V-bit or whatever V-bit you choose. You're going to see that I'm still going to enable the pocket tool and select a 1/8 inch end mill or a 1/4 inch end mill. It doesn't matter. But during the carve, it's going to bypass that end mill and go straight to the 60-degree V-bit. This is because the design is too small for the end mill to even be used. So everything is going to be carved with the V-bit, and the V-bit is still going to give you that flat bottom output. So that is one thing that you definitely want to remember when carving small designs and small text. With that being said, guys, if you guys are getting value out of this channel, please subscribe. Please leave me a comment down below. What is your process on how to carve small text and small designs? I would like to know about it in the comments. Let's go ahead and jump into the video.
Okay, guys, jumping into Carbide Create, the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and enter the dimensions of the material that we're carving. And so we got to come over here to the setup area, and we're going to click on this gear, which is the job setup screen, or it's going to open up the job setup screen. And then the material that I'm carving on is 11 inches wide and the height is 6 inches. The material is 3/4 inch. And I'm going to set my Z0 on the top of the material, and the X and Y zeros are going to be set on the lower left hand corner. All this other stuff is default typically, so I don't touch that. And we're going to click OK. Okay, so let me just give you guys some background information. I've already got this carve set up, and so we're going to go ahead and go over why I did it the way that I did it, and also show you the toolpaths, and then we're going to go into carving. These vectors are coming directly from one of the free flags that are in the Carbide Create library. That's the California Republic flag. So I just figured just try to get a little bit of variety here. We're going to carve an image and we're going to carve some text. And so this larger bear and this larger text is going to be kind of my reference carve. Me personally, what do I like to do? I like to carve designs, logos, and text depending on how big they are and depending on the font. I just go straight to the advanced V-carve. So we're going to go ahead and advanced V-carve this bear and this larger text right here, this California Republic. So those two are going to be our reference carves. What I have here is some other text and some more designs here, this bear. And I'm going to go into each one of those and tell you why I went this route. When it comes to carving text and determining whether I want to use an advanced V-carve or a V-carve, I'm looking for a few things. I'm looking at the size of the text. I'm going to consider the overall size of the text that it's going to be in its final design. And I'm also going to look at the font. What kind of font is it? Is it blocky or is it thin? As you can see here, this particular text here, to me, I describe it as blocky. It's got some blocks, some straight edges here up on the top of the C, of the A. And so this is an indicator for me that this is going to be a good advanced V-CARVE toolpath carve. I wouldn't typically V-CARVE this because I want to be able to see clearly the edges, the flats of this text. I would V-CARVE a text or some fonts that are slim or thin and that are pointy. Those are the kind of the descriptive words that I would pick. This California Republic down here is in Times New Roman, and you can see that there are some sharp points here on this A as to compared to this blocky A up here. It's thinner as well. If you need a little bit more understanding on the V-CARVE and advanced V-CARVE, I do have a video on that I think is helpful. So when it comes to font selection, that's kind of what I'm looking for. And that is going to help me determine whether I'm going to be using the advanced V-CARVE toolpath or if I'm going to be using the V-CARVE toolpath. Now, when we come to the size of the design itself, how big is my letters going to be? How big is this text going to be? If it's really big, if it's for a big flag, for example, a 19.5 by 36 inch flag, and I'm trying to fit this into maybe 2 stripes, the spanning of 2 or 3 stripes, there's no way I'm going to be able to use a 60-degree V-bit or a V-CARVE to be able to carve that. It's just the vectors are going to be too big for the edges of the V-bit to be able to touch the 2 sides of the vectors. And again, go take a look at the video where I describe the 2 different toolpaths, and you'll be able to understand that a little bit more if you're still not following. But trust me when I say if your text is too big, the V-CARVE by itself is not going to be sufficient, and you're going to need to use the advanced V-CARVE. So those are the 2 factors that I'm looking for when I'm determining whether or not to use an advanced V-CARVE or a V-CARVE to carve out text. When it comes to carving designs, logos, images, I'll be honest with you, I'm still leaning towards the advanced. Even though my starting point is advanced V-CARVE, I won't shy away from carving a design or a logo if it's small enough with a V-CARVE. So let me talk about this design real quick. So we know that this bear and this text here is going to be an advanced V-CARVE, and that's our reference point. But I want you to take a look at what the advanced V-CARVE and the V-CARVE looks like and do a comparison of 2 of the exact same text. So we're going to advanced V-CARVE one of these and V-CARVE one of these. We're going to advanced V-CARVE one of these up here and V-CARVE one of these. You can tell that this is the blocky letter and this is the thinner, slimmer, which I think is going to look great in a V-CARVE. What we're going to be talking about here in the bear is the same thing, advanced V-CARVE versus V-CARVE. What looks better? And with this knowledge, hopefully it'll help you get a starting point. Again, guys, these are all starting points. These are not definitive, like this is the way that you have to do it. I'm sure there are different ways to skin this cat, but go ahead and maybe use this as your starting point. So let's go ahead and talk about toolpaths now. So the large bear and the large text are going to be advanced V-CARVed. They're basically the exact same toolpath. I just split them up. When you set up this advanced V-CARVE, you do want to enable the pocket tool. You want to enable the pocket tool because this allows you to select an end mill, and it's going to clear out the majority of the image, allowing your 60-degree V-bit to come in second and just clean up the finer areas that need a little bit more attention to detail. When advanced V-carving anything, you are wanting to set up a max depth. My favorite max depth right now is 0.04 inches. So go ahead and set up a max depth. Let me show you the settings here real quick if you want to take a look at them. And again, you can use these as your starting point, and then you can edit. Similarly with the large text here, it's the exact same toolpath, same settings, nothing's changed. I just split it up for you guys. Max depth is 0.04. Enable the pocket tool, 1/8 inch end mill, coming in with the 60-degree V-bit at the end there. Let's talk about the bears a little bit. Here I have the advanced V-CARVE on the bear. One thing that I've noticed or that I've picked up by accident, and it may be out there in the forum somewhere, but if your text or your image is too small for an end mill, it's going to completely, and it's going to be carved out with the V-bit. And the only way to have this happen though is by enabling the pocket tool. So let me repeat that. I think because that's kind of my secret sauce there that I hang on to when carving small text. If I want the 60-degree V-bit, which is a finer tool, if I want it to carve smaller text or designs, there's no issues with that, because I enable the pocket tool, select the 1/8 inch end mill. It could be a 1/4 inch end mill. It doesn't matter. It's still too big for the design. It's going to bypass this, and then it's going to go straight to the 60-degree V-bit or whatever V-bit I have in there. I'm still going to set up a max depth, so we're going to go with 0.04 on everything this time around. But I think that's something that you're going to want to keep on the back, in your back pocket, that if your design is small and you still want a flat bottom design output, go ahead and enable your pocket area, use a end mill that is too big for the area, and then it should carve only with the V-bit. Here on this particular one, we're going to go ahead and do a V-CARVE toolpath. With the 60-degree V-bit, I left it at default. I don't want to rush this. I don't want the V-bit going too fast and messing up the design, so we're just going to keep it at default. This is what auto-populated here. When setting up a V-CARVE toolpath, you want to set your max depth to stock bottom, so the entire thickness of the material, and no, it's not going to go through the material. The program is going to determine how deep it needs to carve. So let's take a look at the simulation real quick. So here's the simulation. I mean, it doesn't really look a whole lot different, really. I mean, you can see here that there are some deeper carves on the V-CARVE, which is to be expected, but we're not going to be able to truly tell the difference of what looks better until we actually get it carved. So let's go ahead and go on to the next toolpath, and then we'll eventually see what these look like in real life. Okay, so now let's move on to this text here, the Times New Roman. You can see here that this top text is going to be advanced V-carved. You can tell that by the toolpath, right? There's more paths, or there's more paths taken with the V-bit when it's trying to get it to the flat bottom. When it's V-carved, you can tell that it's just a quick carve. It's because it's so small, it's not going to have to carve so deep. It doesn't have that many paths taken, so it's going to be a very quick carve. Here you can see it's under 2 minutes. Let me just show you the settings real quick. Like I said before, what I stumbled upon at some point back in the past, that when I enable the pocket tool, and if the design or the text is too small, it'll jump right to the 60-degree V-bit. And if I remember correctly, I messed up the carve because I automatically assumed with the pocket tool enabled that I was going to start with that, and I messed up a carve, if I remember correctly, because I didn't pay attention to the prompt on the screen. I just immediately went to the end mill, not seeing that my prompt was actually calling for the V-bit. So we see here with this example, even though the 1/8 inch end mill is selected and the enable area pocket tool is selected, we're going to jump right into the 60-degree V-bit. So let me go ahead and just show you the settings. You guys can take a look at this. This doesn't matter because we're going to go ahead and skip that completely. Go ahead and pause if you need to take a look at these. Max depth again is 0.04. With the V-bit, I think I left it at the default entry here. This is what it was populated as. The max depth is stock bottom. And let's take a look at the simulation. So you can see here that both of these look really good. I personally like the V-CARVE better when it comes to Times New Roman, if the V-bit can carve it. But it doesn't look bad in the advanced V-CARVE. And if it was a huge text, if it was larger text size, or overall in the design larger, I would go with the advanced V-CARVE. And lastly, we have the block text here. The advanced V-CARVE is on the top, and the V-CARVE here is on the bottom. You can see that the advanced V-CARVE is going to take more paths. That's why it's darker blue or more blue here, and the V-CARVE will not. Let's take a look at the simulation real quick. When looking at these two texts and comparing them, I think the advanced V-CARVE here on the top looks better than the V-CARVE here on the bottom. It just looks cleaner. We're going to actually take a look at this on the final product and make that determination, but me personally, I think this one looks better on the top. Let me show you guys these settings real quick. That way you guys can see them. Nothing's changing here on the 1/8 inch end mill because it's not going to be used. The 60-degree V-bit, I think, was defaulted here. I didn't touch these. I just don't want to go too fast. Max depth 0.04. The V-bit here, again, defaulted to 1275, 18,000. The max depth is stock bottom. Let me go ahead and get this set up on the machine now, and let me talk to you guys really quickly about one last thing that I do to make sure that these carves come out right. So let's go out there to the CNC now. Well, let's go ahead and do that again. I have a new battery in my microphone, so let's just go ahead and reset the Z0 even after the carve is completed. So I just want to show you the process that I went through. And so I'm just going to be using my wireless controller to move my V-bit over to the material.
So what I'm doing is I'm bringing it over to an area where there is no carved, okay? So before you're carving, actually you'd have a whole lot of area to work with. I'm just using an area that is not carved yet. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and use my paper to bring down this the V-bit until I start getting some drag. That's gonna be at the third fastest. Okay, right there, I'm gonna start slowing it down. I'm gonna go down to the slowest interval. Okay, so I'm starting to feel some drag right there. Actually, I can't even move the paper out from underneath the V-bit without ripping it. So now I'm going to start raising this up. So now I'm going to start raising it up at the lowest interval here on my wireless controller. It's this number 1. I'm going to be using this period button to start raising it. Okay, so there, now I can freely move it. I still have some drag. And I mean, guys, it's all preference. There's no real scientific method to get this right. It's all trial and error. That's moving pretty good, but still contacting paper. I'm going to raise it 3 more clicks. And there's still the ever so slight contact with the paper, but it's freely moving, you know. So I'm going to set it there. So that's what I'm looking for when I'm carving smaller text, smaller fonts and designs. I want just ever so slight contact with the paper. If I need to, if I'm not carving, if I'm not touching the material when I'm carving, I will then go back into Carbide motion and lower the Z0 from this point here. I would then lower my Z0 and reset it again to get a little bit more contact with the paper. That's how I would set my Z0 had I not already had done all this, but that's the process that I go through to set my Z0 when carving smaller fonts, smaller designs.
Hey guys, here's just a video montage of everything being carved. Feel free to skip this if you don't want to see this. If you like music, enjoy the funky beats this time around. If you didn't know before, let me let you know I'm a musician also and love music. So this time around, we're kind of going with some funky music. Let me know in the comments below if you have any type of music requests, and we'll see if we can make it happen.
All right, guys, so let's just go ahead and jump into the discussion of how this came out, how the carves came out. On our baseline carve, everything came out really good. I believe everything came out really good. Even here in the eye area, even though these vectors are really small already to begin with, they actually came out really good. The letters came out really good as well. The only thing that I could tell here that I would probably look at the file a little bit closer, because you can see that there's some lines, or I guess the sides here maybe aren't as straight as they could be. And I believe that that's part of the vector itself, not necessarily the carve or how the carve was set up. So I would just take a look at that if I were to really be picky. But I think the bear, especially this eye area, these vectors are extremely small, and I'm very happy how that came out. And now keep in mind, this is already small to begin with. So even though it is our baseline, this is a really good smaller carve. But we did make it smaller, even smaller. But since we are talking about the bears and how I like this eye, let's talk about the bear and the advanced V-carve and the V-carve. Let's go ahead and get a little bit closer. Okay, so when you're carving something this small, you're going to have some give and take. You're not going to get perfection. That's the first thing you got to remember or keep in mind. You're not going to have perfection. So is it good enough for your final product within the whole scheme of things, within the entire design? Because something this small is typically going to be within a larger overall design. So would I be happy with this? I would not be happy with this currently. What I would do is I would raise up my Z0 and do another test carve to see if I can get a little bit more detail. Because you can see here that in the eye area, it kind of gets blended. And keep in mind, this was already small to begin with on our baseline bear, but it's even smaller and maybe near impossible with the CNC to be able to get that detail. But I would do what I can to get it as close as possible. So I would raise my Z0 a little bit more. Another thing that I would do is I would delete some vectors within the bear just to make it a little bit clearer, a little bit more simple, a little bit more basic. That way the V-bit does not carve into multiple different vectors, because and what ended up happening here, you can see that these kind of all got blended together, especially the eye area. So do I like this V-carve? So this V-carve overall still came out pretty good. One thing that I do notice here is that the grass area and the line around it didn't carve. So I would actually set my Z0 again, maybe around this area, a little bit closer to here to get these to carve out. That came out pretty good. I like this area here. It's kind of got me that flat bottom, which I like. So while there's still some areas of improvement, overall, I think this came out pretty good, especially in these areas, these larger areas. Moving on to the V-bit, it did carve a little bit better as far as the grass goes in this area. But what I don't like is that it is deeper. It is a deeper carve. You can see that my pencil fits within this area. So it is a deeper carve, and that's just the nature of a V-carve. But that's just the nature of a V-carve. The V-bit is going to go into the material until the edges of the V-bit meet the edges of the vector. Overall, I mean, this is preference at this point, but this is not my favorite. It's not what I would do, but that is just what it came out like. My take is that I would still go with the advanced V-carve, try to get that flat bottom and just continue to work on the settings, and then maybe do multiple passes as I'm going on my final product. If again, I get this on the final product, I would reset my Z0, maybe around this general area and just carve out the grass and then the little outline of the grass. Which one do you think looks better? Leave me a comment below and let me know if you like the advanced V-carve or the V-carve, and what do you currently do? Okay, so let's take a look at text now. And we'll start off with the blocky text. My preference is to always use an advanced V-carve when I have text such as this, where that is kind of blocky looking, over the V-carve. It just gives me a better output. So here you can see nice clean letters. There's a little bit of fuzz there, but you could take that off with maybe a toothbrush. Whereas here in the V-carve, it kind of came out okay. You definitely get some fuzz left behind. Let me zoom in a little bit. While it may look okay here on the camera, overall, the cleaner carve is this advanced V-carve. So my recommendation is still to use an advanced V-carve when you have text that are kind of blocky. And again, that's my descriptive word. However you visualize or think about it, when you see text like this that is blocky, use the advanced V-carve. I would avoid the V-carve when carving fonts such as this. When it comes to this Times New Roman, this thinner, sleeker, pointy font, I thought the V-carve was going to be the best toolpath to get this to carve correctly. But I'm actually pleased with both toolpaths. The advanced V-carve here on top came out really nice. So did the V-carve. This comes down to now preference. Whatever you prefer, whatever you're more comfortable with is what I would go with. Now keep in mind, we are carving smaller text, smaller fonts, smaller designs. What is going to get you the best outcome? Now this worked out fine with a V-carve and an advanced V-carve, but that's why we have to have trial runs, test runs to be able to experiment on what is going to get us the best output. If you were to get smaller text, even smaller text, I would avoid the V-carve and I would strictly stick to the advanced V-carve, using the finest point, using the point of the V-bit to carve or to get me the output that I want. Rather than the V-bit plunging into the material, I would like the point of the V-bit to give me that flat bottom output. So just to recap that, I guess, if I were to do this at a smaller size, I would still do a test run, but I would almost lean towards the advanced V-carve. So there's just some feedback that I wanted to share with you guys regarding the output of this carve. The main thing to keep in mind is that when you are carving stuff that is small, test run, do a test run. Don't just jump right into your good material. You want to test your settings. You want to test different options, multiple different toolpaths. and then play with it. Again, like on this advanced V-CARVE bear, I would have to reset my Z0 again and carve only the areas that were not carved. You may want to do that. I would be willing to do that. You may not. You may want to just go straight to the V-bit. If you were carving smaller text than this, even still smaller, you may want to try the V-CARVE, but my gut feeling would be that eventually you would have to jump from the V-CARVE to the advanced V-CARVE to get that correct output that you want. These are just a couple of different ways to carve smaller fonts, smaller designs. Let me know in the comments if you have a different method. I'm always trying to find different methods of improvement. I'm currently at the advanced V-CARVE as my favorite toolpath, especially when carving smaller items, smaller designs. But if you have something else that is working for you, let me know. I'm always willing to try something new. All right, guys. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys on the next one.